So our topics this week, we're going to chat warm up and just go through, what makes a good warm up versus not a great warm up. And then afterward, we talked about getting a little bit into dealing with different like adaptive athletes, from both like a neurological standpoint and from a physical standpoint. So then we'll get into that and just kind of go through like some notes I have down. For reference to, I'm starting with a client that has autism this week. And she's higher functioning from what I'm told, but I still don't know 100% what I'm walking into. So I got a chance to talk to her parents, a previous coach, and then another coach. One of the coaches at my gym is also a specialist with training like adult special needs. So I sat down with her this morning and like really talked things through. So I'm going to kind of give you all the different angles of some of those conversations that I've had with them as well to give you guys some insight. All right, well, let's start off with warm up. What do you, before I just get into my checklist and what we've got written down, what do you guys like to see in warm ups? What's your go to if you don't go to class? What's the first thing you do?
Get the heart
Dynamic.
rate up.
Oh
The
yeah, first I
dynamic
like heart rate
heart
up,
rate,
machines. Then I do something dynamic.
which I think depending on what the dynamic is, it could potentially be something that elevates the heart rate too. We certainly do have some like crossover in some of these that we can do a 2 for 1. It sounds weak and like I'm very immobile, but like rowing for me is going to get my sweat going, is going to get my heart rate up and mobilizes some joints because I'm not the most flexible person. So when I get on the rower and I really try to condense and try, it kind of does take me through some of those joint ranges of motion. So we certainly have some crossover. What's something else?
Activation after the dynamic.
Getting things activated. Um, I would say that's like a what category would we put that in? Developmental, I would say, because it's not necessarily developmental in the sense of like you're coaching a skill, but you're developing those like neurological pathways to turn on whatever muscle it is. Like that is a part of it. Throw something else. I got one more listed here.
Full range of motion.
Yeah, full range of the joints. Let's say with like I think the dynamic that Justin was talking about, that's probably kind of what you meant there, right? Then I would say total body, get everything going. Um, I think sometimes as a coach, like I can be guilty of that. Like we'll have, a very heavy squat day, and it's like so much focus on the legs and so much focus on getting that like the upper body gets neglected. Um, or like today in Mayhem we had shoulder press, we had handstand walks, like huge emphasis on what the upper body's doing, then maybe the lower body gets neglected. But you have to remember we are CrossFitters, we're doing functional movements. Part of the key characteristics in functional movement is that they're multi-jointed and a lot of times they are total body. So like you think about something even like kipping pull up, yeah, it's arms, but we also are using the rest of our body to get that movement going too. So our checklist through on a good warm up, we get the body temperature up. You can just think of that as I'm going to get them sweating. Our cardiovascular system primed and ready, heart rate. Chris Hinshaw has a really good thing about that I always like to teach people. Like if you are in cold weather and you go turn your car on and it's 10 degrees outside and you put the heater on, does the heat come out? No. The car takes a minute and then it warms up and then the heat comes out. That's no different than our cardiovascular system. We're not hot, our blood's not flowing fast. If we suddenly pour a raging river down, our body's not going to have the best reaction. We got to like bring it up to speed level. So heart rate, range of motion of the joints. Justin already kind of said it. Dynamic warm up is going to be the best thing for that. So we're moving through and passing through ranges of motion, not necessarily just static holding. That's going to be better for like post walk, those like static stretches. Goal and development in movement. So like that's a coaching the warm up perspective. You don't want to waste that. There's plenty of opportunity to see things in, start to get skill going. And whether you're going to slow them down and actually stop them, or you're just giving them something to think about while they're doing it, that's going to be really important. So it could be simple as a butt kick. You're going to try to touch your heel to your butt. It sounds dumb, but there's a lot of people that don't attempt that. They don't get the full warm up they want. Or it could be, you're doing air squats for the warm up today, and you give a cue to not let the shoulders get in front of the toes. They have to stay behind the toes. So it just can be a thought there. And then in that developmental process, we're also analyzing, right? If I'm giving some simple movements and a person can't quite do a downward dog, opposite arm, opposite foot tap because they don't have the stability, then it's going to start to cue me off for more advanced movements later. And I know I'm automatically going to have the skill. So in those developmental movements in that phase too, we're going to be paying attention to who's capable of what, who's struggling, who may be out of breath, and it's going to cue us off into who I need to focus on those scaling efforts. Like I said earlier, total body. We're just trying to get everything moving. Even if you don't touch the body part for whatever reason, you probably did the day before and you're probably going to the day after. So getting blood flow into that region, even if it's not a big focal point, can be really good for facilitating recovery and just keeping things going. A body in motion stays in motion type thought. And then the last one, which kind of starts to bleed out of the general warm up and a little bit more into the specific warm up, is the statement of prepping for rigorous movement. That's where we're going to see, progressions. We're prepping and we're practicing for complex movements. And then that's where we're going to see the loading as well, right? We don't go from a barbell back squat to 5% in a set. We've got to gradually build that load with guidance. There's our warm up in a nutshell. Any thoughts on any of that stuff? Does it make you kind of think things you can add in your warm up that maybe you've been missing a little bit? What do you guys think there? Good. Cool. One thing I'll say on warm ups that as a coach and an athlete that bothers me is redundancy. So I think it can be really challenging sometimes, but do your best job into changing what your warm up is. So not having the same thing every single day. I think it does a couple things. It keeps things fresh. People aren't like rolling their eyes when you send them on the same 200-meter run that you do at the start of class every day. I also think it keeps you more engaged as a coach because you are doing new things. So you kind of have to be a little more engaged and watching out for that coaching and warm up part. But I think with like the actual athlete, I think when the warm up is the same thing that you've run for the past 3 months and they can tell you what's next before you have to say it, I kind of think you lose their attention span a little bit. And they start to go into this like, I'm just moving through ranges of motion. And I think when that happens, you're almost like setting a tone for when you are going to try to reel them in and you are going to try to do a specific warm up. Everyone's not as engaged as they could have been. Versus if I know what's coming, I'm more likely to talk. I'm more likely to zone out. I'm more likely to kind of not take it serious as well, which I think happens all the time in class. So try your best to change it up. Do things like coach led, you call each part out. Do things like a small 4 to 5 minute AMRAP or like a Tabata interval. When you have time, play a game. That always throws everything for a loop with it. And they'll act like they don't want to play, but then when they're playing, they're laughing and they're smiling and they're having a good time. So just get as creative as possible. And I know that's hard from a coach perspective to always do that, but that's where like taking other coaches' classes, watching classes, occasionally dropping into gyms. I think those things have what has helped me get more creative and make better warm-ups is literally just going to other coaches because you don't need to be a level 3 or a level 4 to have some creativity, right? On that thought, does that provoke any questions or thoughts?
Go ahead.
No, you go. That's fine.
What I've seen in the warm up is like that could be where a coach can take their coaching to the next level as opposed to just kind of checking out and just doing the same warm up that really doesn't even always apply to what's getting focused on during the WOD or even the strength portion before. So like Jose, he always like has a very specific warm up that's tailored more towards that workout. So you never get the same kind of thing. So that's one aspect of like where you should be like being more creative and making the warm ups so it's more closer to what's happening that day. But the
100%
other
agree.
side of that too is like Gina does a good job of this is talk about how each one of the exercises in the warm up is specifically supposed to do what is designed in the body for the workout. So if you're doing some sort of like pulling, say pull ups, chest to bar, and you're doing maybe ring rows for the warm up, you can be like, these are activating the lats, the same action that you're going to be doing on the pull up bar. And I think it makes people more engaged in the warm up when they're like, oh, this is actually going to help me get not just range of motion, but help me in the actual workout.
That there's actually thought and intent going into what you're doing. I agree with both of those statements fully through. I think really engaging in the warm up and having that intent. I don't think it just elevates your coaching. I think it can massively elevate your coaching. And then I do think the warm up is such a good time for little explanations and whys like that. It also goes to show your class that you've planned, you've prepped, you've thought this through. And it also can give you time to get into other conversations and help deliver education, that may not have anything to do with the warm up, but just because the speed of it can allow you to. I love that stuff. And it's sometimes I'm sitting there talking to myself and people are listening, but they're not engaging necessarily in responses. I think it's a hell of a lot better than silence in the gym with like low music playing in the background for sure. Love that. I agree with both of those things. E, what were you gonna say?
It was kind of along those lines.
The same.
Yeah, and also like that's a good time for you to like kind of show your personality and you know, yeah, just kind of have fun while you're warming them up before you drill them or something.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like let you be you, and then you're human. Have fun with them. You don't have to be always the dictator over class. I think two things being said there that members really take notice in. And I think when you do a good job at it, you hear it. And people will make little comments and kind of say things. When you do a bad job at it, they don't want to tell you you don't hear it. They may tell somebody else and you hear it through the grapevine. Is the intent. People do recognize when you have thought things through and like there's a why and the reason behind. They do recognize that and they do respond to it. And then I think and the personality, like let yourself be you. And that kind of goes into our presence and attitude piece of coaching. I think people can smell when you haven't prepped, even though they might not be able to tangibly put their hand on it. They just know it's not as good as maybe the other guy is when there is preparation. And then I also think they can smell when you're being ingenuine. So just allowing yourself to be you and whatever that is, let that see through. I'm the king of like bad jokes. Sometimes they hit and the whole class laughs. And sometimes I make a joke and not a single person even smirks. But I think they even appreciate the really bad ones. And when it is a bad one, I make a joke against myself that was terrible. And they kind of just appreciate me being me on that. So definitely let those two things shine through.
I also like to use the warm up too as like look at everyone's movement so I can sort of get like a scaling idea
analysis
for the workout.
Yeah. You guys,
so it's like
should be always doing that.
Because especially if it's someone new coming into CrossFit that hasn't done shit in their life, and we have squat clings and ring muscle ups, it's like, okay, now you got to start planning, like looking at your lesson plan. What do you have planned for the scale people already? So you kind of already have that in mind.
Yeah, you already know you're going to make an audible. And like staging that too. I had two girls come to class last week. The one was very young. She was probably 14 or 15. And then her mom was overweight, had done CrossFit. I think it's been like 7 years though, so very long time. And I told them, I was like, we're gonna scale things. I'm gonna pull it back. I want you guys to get a good workout, but I don't want you feeling like a train wreck tomorrow. And then in the warm up, it was my gauge to see how they were, and I intentionally had them hold the plank, and they couldn't hold the plank. So they both had to go on their knees. That told me like loading's not going to be a big thing today. And I already had that plan kind of like layered in there. So yeah, definitely use those points. And like even in the warm up, I've seen this happen with coaches to where they call out a movement. I think starting to learn what movements are going to be hard for new people and what movements aren't going to be hard for new people. Sometimes you'll tweak your warm up even from your lesson plan based on who shows up. A really good example is like a long lunge where you're in the plank position, you put your foot flat and your hands are on the inside. And sometimes people will do the greater stretch where they drop the elbow and they reach up. Like that position for a very new person can be kind of hard to get into and they kind of struggle. So like how could you sub that out, get the same effect for class, but make it easier? A Samson lunge. So just having little deviations or like scaling options ready for those people, even in the warm up, can be a big thing too. Because I think if they go through the warm up and they struggle, they're kind of like on that fight or flight. I'm real nervous about what's about to happen if I'm struggling in the warm up versus scaling them in the warm up too. Kind of keeps them a little more calm and at bay, I think. What else? Any other thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I was gonna say something. There's the professional coach, they ask to level 4 to make a programming, and then they compare the two programming of them, and it was like interesting how the one thing that it was the specific warm up was like kind of the same, but the general warm up was
Totally different.
Yeah, it was like running, and the guy wanted them to do rowing, and they asked him why, and he's like, I always want them to do something different than what they are doing. And the girl was more like, I want them to do something that they are going to implement in the workout. So they were not wrong. It was like, you're both right. It's just two different ways of saying. And yeah, and about what Justin said, I kind of like, it was like they made an evaluation to me, well, to all of the coaches. And then one of the things that they said was like, I am sometimes too paternalistic, like trying to always like being controlling and like, what do you need? You need this. I'm bringing it to you, instead of like leaving them. And like, and that also shows in the warm up. Like I'm telling, like, you are doing this, you're doing that, instead of like, hey, we're doing an AMRAP of 8 minutes, and just let them go. And then, so it also shows what kind of person you are during the what warm up you're choosing.
And what I will say too is if we're gonna make the statement that you have these two level 4 coaches and they have two different very opposite warm ups and neither one of them were wrong, then I would say you're like paternal instinct. That is stylistic as well. Is it wrong for me to bring a band to each person in the class rather than make them go get it? No, it's not. That's purely your style there. What I will say is like you just have to take a step back and go, is group management there or is it not? Like you have to try to make it very objective rather than accidentally falling into like opinionated things. Because I'm like that. I bring people PVC pipes. I set up boxes before class. I set up rowers before class. I never ask them to do extra work unless they're just willing to help. Because I think at the end of the day, you have to remember they spend a lot of money to be at our gym, right? My gym's $250 a month. That ain't cheap. And we are essentially customer service people with the skill of coaching. So I want their experience to be the best experience day in and day out rather than making them do extra work. That's not to say I'm gonna go get their dumbbells and stuff. Like there's obviously a balance there, but like let yourself be you if that's the person, because like people may see that as caring versus just go get your own thing type stuff too. But what I will say is like in things like the warm up, I agree with them. Like let them just move sometimes, something simple. Like don't be the same every day. Like let yourself shine through, but have some deviations and challenge yourself to go the opposite way here and there. Because I've seen both ends where things are too loose and the person needs a lot more control. And then I've seen people that have a lot of control and they would be a much better coach if they loosen up a little bit. So I think you definitely need a balance of the two.
I have some takes on this too.
Go ahead.
So I think it's a matter of feeling out the room, and you may need to do more micromanaging. And I never see Jose as like paternal. I see him as more managing things like the warm
Structured.
ups, more getting people as opposed to having that freedom, more that structure. But if
Which
you have
we
a lot
should
of
have.
if you have a lot of new people, you need more micromanaging in the room as opposed to if you have all your little seasoned veterans where you can be like, all right, we're going to do some shoulder stuff and this is what I want you to do. And you can kind of let people go. But like, yeah, I think that's more of the art of coaching where you have to determine how much of that micromanaging you need based on your room.
And you can also, so I think like as an athlete, I'm a CrossFit veteran. I've been doing it over 10 years and I don't necessarily want to go through all the layers of a shoulder press, right? But how could you get me engaged? Let's say I am going to go through all the layers of a shoulder press because I have some new people in class and I really want to drive that home. On set one could be a barbell with a focal point. And then I could yell out in the room, if you've been CrossFitting for more than 6 months, go ahead and add load to your bar. All of those people added load. The new people are still with the PVC pipe or empty barbell, right? So like you can make ways to make things more challenging. And if those like better athletes are making the comment and they're rolling their eyes, if they don't need 6 sets of empty barbell layering shoulder press, awesome. I'll make it harder for you. We'll add more load. You're also going to pause, which is going to make you fitter. So be be okay with doing that. That's something I've added into some of my specific warm-ups when I am controlling class more. I start to add in some load, even though I'm still doing a progression of some things. If it's a squat snatch, I'm probably not going to add load because I still need to get to an end product of a squat snatch. But if it's a front squat, we might go barbell, throw 10s or 15s on, another one, throw 25s on, another one. And then I'm also maybe going to layer in, if you're starting to bend over, don't go heavier for the workout. So I also start to layer in like guidelines too. So don't be afraid that everything always has to be piece by piece without load. Like let things get challenging for the people that can handle it, obviously. What with that feedback, Jose, how did you feel about that?
It was more like let them be more like let them relax more and let them be instead of it was like it would be better on your time management if you let people do stuff instead of being moving them.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know that I agree with that statement because I find the days I let some slack go, I lose more time. So
Yeah,
I think
I
I
remember
think
that
it depends.
I came from one point to another. I remember it was two moments on that class particularly. It was just one class in anyway, so it can be
A
also
small sample
subjective.
size.
But I remember that I said, you keep doing something and I will bring your bike. So I went to the other half of the and brought the bike to the person. And also I switched boxes because boxes of the height it was different and people needed a couple of boxes. I understand that release them.
One thing I'll say too though is like there's times where I'll go intentionally get a bike or a box or something for somebody because what I don't want to happen is they go across the room to grab something and then they start talking to someone. And we're all just sitting there waiting for them to get back. So I think at times that is a good move. But I think it's art of coaching, right? When
Yeah.
when isn't.
I mean, what I feel is like, okay, I'm going to implement this thing that I am not used to, like probably through an unwrap of warming up or stuff. Like I'm not really I don't do that to see what's going on.
Another good way you guys can balance too, and I've been doing this in my general warm ups. specifically and a little bit into my specific is like have, you know, and I've changed my style on this, I think, even from a year ago. Have, you know, let's say we're gonna do a power clean and get them moving, and like maybe the first one's like a clean pull. Come off the clean pull and let's hold the plank. Come off the plank and let's go muscle clean. Come off the muscle clean, let's do air squats. So it's like you're giving them some mindless things in between to break up the control in itself. I think that can work really well sometimes to kind of go back and forth. So it's not five things in a row with a lot of control, which it's appropriate to do that sometimes too, obviously. But on certain days, you give like, I'm going to control, I'm going to be let you be free. I'm going to control, I'm going to let you be free. So you can kind of toss up both of those. But I mean, all in all of these opinionated, you know, stylistic things that happen, doesn't matter really what we do. It just matters that we get the body temperature up, we get the heart rate going a bit, we mobilize mobilize joints, range of motion. We coach the things that should be coached, especially, and we give, you know, cues, feedback, stuff like that. We get that whole body going, and then that we have ample time to either do a progression for complex loading or, you know, load up the barbell in that as well. Strength and Metcon people, mayhem, those types of workouts, much more challenging to check all of those boxes, specifically time to load to a proper percentage. That is, I think, what I find the most challenging thing to do. So getting creative in the general warm-up and fatigue skill is going to be more important for us than it would be, you know, for Isa, G, or Elise that have one element. They could do a very general warm-up, not really do a lot of skill, and they still have plenty of time to teach skill. So stylistic in the type of class you're coaching also. Any other thoughts, statements on that stuff before we go to thoughts on adaptive athletes?
It's one thing about the prep set. It's part of like it's not even part of the specific warm-up, but it will be like part of the preparation for the work.
Technically those like prep loads are the specific warm-up. That is a part of it because you're not at the workout yet. You're still prepping for the workout. Does that make sense? So really, it really is a part of the specific warm-up.
I mean the part of the like it's before a metcon. Okay, let's choose, you know, to check the flow, to check security.
Oh, like a tester round.
Yeah, and to increase the heart rate. So it varies. I've seen this. It varies from people or even from classes. Like there will be classes that they reject completely doing it because it's like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go right now. I don't want to waste more energy before the workout itself. And there are other classes that it feels like, yeah, I need to give it a go before doing it. So I would say like morning people, they will need one extra warm up, and sometimes like 6 p.m. they are 7 p.m. they are too tired from the whole day, and then I just want to go.
They're more checked out. With stuff like that, like when you know that it's, you know, the 5:30 p.m. class is going to be checked out and they're going to ignore me, put it in without like telling them what they're doing. Like for example, we did on yesterday's workout, I was like, guys, go ahead and grab your rope. We're just going to make sure that's warm. Go ahead and give me 30 seconds of double unders. Go. Everyone does 30 seconds of double unders. Okay, let's move to the toes to the bar. Go ahead and give me a set of 8 toes to the bar. Whatever variation you're doing, they do that as well. And I'm kind of moving them through pretty quickly. And what they didn't realize is they were doing a full test round of the workout. So you can get creative and just like not tell them that you're going to do a round of XYZ and just call one thing at a time and see if that works too. And then what I did with that was like, if you guys got over 40 double unders in your 30 seconds, you're good for RX 100 per round. If you got 8 of your toe to bar variation without losing your swing or breaking, you're good for the 20, but you're going to break it up through the 20. If you got, you know, I forgot what I called for back squat. I think I just had them do 5 back squat. If you did 5 back squat and you weren't burning up or starting to teeter over, then you're good for the 10. Otherwise, let's lessen load. So like I gave them a prep round they didn't realize, and then also give them guidance on how to drop reps or modify it there too. So try that. Just break it and don't tell them where they're going and see if you can get them to do it. All right, cool. Let's move on to adaptive athletes. Let's go adaptive, like the article I was able to find when it comes to like limbs and things like that. And then we'll go neurological afterward. So incredibly hard to find information on this, sadly enough. Everything was either, this was probably the best one I found as far as like information goes, but everything I was coming across was either like a little snippet that didn't give you enough and asked you to sign up for a course afterward, which I can't stand. I get it, but it annoys me. Or like I found some personal things, like from Steph Hammerman. I don't know if any of you guys remember, she was really popular around 2014, 15. She was a neurological adaptive athlete, but she just had like little notes and letters to the community about what that experience is like and trying to get more people involved. So it was tough to find information. I think part of why it's so tough to find information is because the whole thing, whether it's physically adaptive or like neurologically, is kind of, it depends, right? And a lot of trial and error surrounding it. So I think it's almost impossible to write a playbook on exactly what to do because every single person is different without adaptations. And then, especially in that community, it's probably going to be even greater difference between person to person. Did you guys have any takeaways going through that article before I get into what I jotted down? All right, so some of the stuff I have, never thought of this, but in the warm-ups, mobilizing, this is for physically adaptive, mobilizing not only the joints they're about to use. So let's say they're missing an arm and primarily they're going to be maybe doing stuff only on their right arm, but also trying to mobilize the joint of where they had damage. Never thought of that, but in the article said it can be very hard to mobilize because of like prosthetics and things like that. But they can still sustain injuries and pain in those joints. So like trying to keep them moving and create connections was a big one. Never crossed my mind, to be honest. I think when it comes to starting to work with them, trial and error is going to be huge. And I think just like we would approach a free trial, start super simple, super basic, and grow from there. So I think when we look at our methodology of how we're going to take somebody from point A that may be very deconditioned and get them to point B later on that's going to be more advanced, I don't think that changes at all. I think we're starting off very basic, we just have to get more creative with how we're going to get there sometimes. So let's say it's squat, right? We're probably going to start off on a very high box squat, and then from there start to lower the squat with our goal being eventually getting the squat without a box. Really doesn't change from a free trial, right? Somebody comes in and it's heavy squat day and they've never done CrossFit and they've never been in a gym. I'm automatically in my head going, we're going to squat to a box or a med ball. So I think all of those concepts that you guys already have and you've already trained, use them if you do end up working with an adaptive athlete. I liked that in that article it said, don't baby or sugarcoat or change things. Like try to preserve all the same things that we can. And just get creative, make the scaling options, make the adaptations, but don't necessarily like treat them special. Obviously, I think that's a pretty, in this day and age, obvious thing to think about. Yeah, I mean, I really don't have a whole lot more to say on that besides you're gonna be wrong sometimes. right? We're going to have a whole plan, and the plan doesn't go well immediately, and that's okay. Just be prepared to make switches, and I think especially just having the communication with that person that we're going to try this, or this is what's on the agenda today. It may not work, and I'm sure, you know, them being adaptive. There's not just in the gym, but there's a million things in life that they have to tweak probably on a daily basis and find their routines. So that's not a new thing to them. It just may feel a little stressful to us when something doesn't go well, but be ready for that and just tell yourself, like, I'm going to make errors. Things aren't going to work. Certain things are going to be painful that we have to switch, and just be okay with it. Have a good line of communication between you and the athlete. And I think that's the biggest part that would be good. Some things I also didn't think about is just like the breakdown of prosthetics. So if you're working with somebody with a prosthetic, if we're training in it, those things are going to break and wear out just like regular equipment. So being mindful of that, and you know, whether or not, I think if it's a seasoned athlete, they're probably very mindful already. But if it's not, and it's somebody that's just starting their athletic career, like that may be something we need to be aware of, to have them just like check things and keep an eye on stuff. And then being mindful of like irritation and rashes was another one that was in this article. So just being thoughtful, I would say, with like if we are programming things and we know we used that joint a lot the day before, just like we would program, and if we squatted on Monday, we're probably not going to squat heavy on Tuesday. Having that same thought process, like giving things a day to recover and relax. Any thoughts, statements, personal experiences with coaching, your friends,
I
that
guess
you guys want to throw in?
I'm just like want to make sure that this is what I understood. Like when you say mobilize, you know, the damaged limbs. So like, for example, if, you know, somebody is on a wheelchair, you would want to mobilize their legs, their hips. Like, I know it's not.
I think that would be like, in that case, that would be more of a question of like, do they have use of it at all? But like when I say mobilize the damaged joint, like let's say I have somebody that has a prosthetic leg, right? One leg's good and functioning, the other one's a prosthetic. They lost their leg at one point, not ignoring that side with the prosthetic. You know, especially when we're thinking about something like a hip where one is going to be functioning and the other one isn't going to be functioning to the same capacity. Like, how many times has something been wrong? Your lower back hurts and it hurts on this side, but the issue is
Yeah.
on this side. You know,
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. So it's like, I think somebody is, you know, completely lost the use of their legs in a wheelchair. There's not really much we can do there.
So there's a very famous guy from my country that he's upper limb, and he's kind of famous now here. He lives in the US. When he does a jerk, he needs to be sure to mobilize
Reposition.
and be, because he doesn't go this way. He goes like this way. So his center of gravity, he's like he switches completely, and like being, it's not only in this way, he has to go like also, and
So it's like
the other way.
you're not mobilizing just the shoulder. You've got to get the entire trunk and core of both sides ready to go.
He does, like when he does what is rope climbs, it's more like a keep hip, because he cannot really hold himself. So he's like more like keep, and keep getting same thing with pull-ups. It's more like not only in these two axes, but also like around the trunk a lot.
Like he's using all different ranges of motion to be able to manipulate. And I would say is his name Victor? Yeah, I know him. I worked with him at Victor Drips. I don't know him well. We're past and met each other at Victor Drips. Yeah, don't go say, oh, I know Coach Nate. Like, who the hell's that guy? Yeah, and I would say he's much more of an advanced adaptive athlete. Like these are games level adaptive athletes, which I think at that point in time, they're probably way easier to work with than not, because they've been in the game, they've been training a very long time, so they probably have a very good understanding of what's going to work and what's not going to work. I think the tougher situations are going to be the people that don't have a lot of experience, and those are going to be our heavy trial and error, and we're gonna see how it goes down. And what from the little experience I have, their determination is usually very high. So they're usually highly motivated, very determined, because these are people that got told you're never gonna. A lot of them got told you're never gonna do X, Y, Z. So to them, they're making these accomplishments and they're proving people wrong in a lot of situations. Even people that get told they're never gonna walk again, there's plenty of instances where people do regain that. It's a very long road, but if someone has a little bit of function and a little bit of movement, and let's say they are in a wheelchair, even if their leg doesn't move, sometimes with the thought of trying to move them, you'll get these little wins over time, and you start to regain that as well. My old boss was one of those people. Someone broke her neck. She was told she's never going to walk again, and she was like, hell no. That's not how I'm going to live my life. I think it took her over a decade, but she's a function. You would never have an idea that she would live through that now if you met her. So whatever you can use and take advantage of and try to work it, even if it's very minimal. You guys ever do like a Superman on the floor with a very tight client, and they go to pull their shoulders off and their shoulders don't leave the floor, but you can kind of like see them shaking, you see them working. And then after a couple of weeks, they start to leave the floor and they start to get more distance and more distance. As long as we have some kind of activation and like effort there, like good things can happen. Anything else on that before I go to neurological? So with the neuro is the exact same thing. I'm going to kind of speak from the conversation I had in the past week about it. Sorry, I'm looking for my other notes. You're going to have an end of the spectrum here that's going to be, extremely nonverbal and not in tune with body movement, or not even fully in control of body movement too. A lot of like involuntary things. And then you're going to have the opposite end where they're extremely high functioning, they're verbal, they have decent control. So even with the same disability, you can get very different perspectives. And I'm going to give you some like takeaways from the conversation I had about the girl I'm starting this week that has autism. She responds very well to routines. So finding a loop of something that you're going to be working and it's very regular, it looks the same, is where she has the most development in. That came from her parents and what the coach kind of found that worked with her. So routines can be something that's heavily used. Things that were very involved with you said 20. Things that were very involved with you, she responds well to. So doing things like if we were going to plank and pass a wall ball back and forth with each other, like she has a lot of fun. It's kind of like a game. And basically the more game like that I could make it, they said that she would respond better and kind of be involved with. She's pretty intellectual, so she likes counting. So counting through the reps are something that engages her a lot. And then tactile cues, which I didn't see coming, because I know, especially with autism, like touch is something that they can get very uncomfortable with, but not tactile cue in the sense of, I'm gonna touch your back and manipulate you, but a tactile cue in the sense of if she's doing a dumbbell shoulder press and hit my hand and then back down. So in the tactile cue parts, all parties, her parents, the coach that worked with her, and then the coach that had the special population class, range of motion tactile cues work good for pretty much all of them. And then even changing the names of what it is. So basically, you guys that have worked with kids, almost making it like a kids class if you think about it. Like we're giving them very, very precise direction. If we're teaching kids, we're not going to have these verbal teaching used, right? We're going to show them what it looks like more than anything. So we're not talking too much. We're not getting too complex. We're counting games. We're doing, back and forth things involved with this. So like games, like things that are a little funner, go hand in hand. What else do I got? And then all of them said be ready to switch things on a dime. So have a plan going. That plan may be thrown out of the window in the first 2 minutes of this session. So just have different things ready every day. And basically some of the feedback was, you can get a day where it's a good day. They're in, visuals. Basically all of them said teaching cues need to be visual. And then just be prepared, like what kind of mood they're in and what day is going to be too. If it's an exciting day, being a little more energetic, enthusiastic, engages really well from what I'm told. If it's a bad day, tone yourself down, talk more gentle, be friendly, and like just really lower your volume as well. So just being ready to switch, and even in the session, being ready to switch and trying to learn what their like cues are. So if something's not going well and they're about to switch and have a bad time, like start to learn and figure out what that buildup looks like so you can change your gears before it happens. So really like looking at, whether it's an adaptive athlete that's like just physically adaptive or a neurological adaptive athlete, it's really a lot of just trial and error and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and being just very willing to scrap things and move to the next thing. The parents, the coach, and the coach that works with the special class, all of them were like, "You're gonna try stuff, and it's gonna go so bad, and just throw it away, and move on." And I would say, like, if you really sum it up, is it that much different than coaching a regular class? Right? We've all been in situations where we try something and it doesn't go well in class, and we have to scrap it and move on. I would just say the degree is probably a little bit bigger with it as well. So I think my biggest takeaway from all this is don't be afraid of being wrong. When you are wrong, just make a switch and don't force anything. Like it's not up to you, it's up to them. And just try to have a good time with it, I would say. Any thoughts, statements, things you want to add on?
I think that's interesting, and I would like to hear more about it as you go.
Yeah, I'll keep you guys filled in. I think my first one's and I just think it was interesting because like I went and read online immediately, right? I went and read all the things that may bother, not bother, all that stuff, and then turning around and having the phone call with the parents and having the phone call with the coach that has worked with her. The coach that worked with her, by the way, was very minimal. It was only 6 sessions. He wasn't visiting her mom. There was a lot of things that went hand in hand from what I read online. And then there was things like the tactile cues. Like I was planning on having 0 tactile. And then the coach tells me her favorite thing is to go high five every person in class. So I'm like, okay, like total curveball in what I was expecting here. So I think it just really showed like how different a case by case basis is. And I would say like going to read and having ideas, a lot of things did line up with that. So like if you do come across, take the time to go read and learn as much as you can about it as well. I was told, unfortunately, that there is a lot of gyms that won't let intellectual in. They see it as too high of a risk. So that's very unfortunate. So being someone that is just open to doing it, I think actually goes a very long way for that individual and their families. And then even Jess was telling me, my gym owner that has those classes a week, that a lot of like PTs and OTs don't go to the extent that they should. They keep it so simple that they don't really ever like mobilize things and have these attempts at like doing what a human body needs. They keep it so benign that if you can get like some extra stuff in, like neurological work, she was saying like cross body high fives are they're super simple, but like for them it's a very hard like crossing the brain type stuff. So she was like, get as much of that in as you can too, because they're not getting that in their normal therapy sometimes. And you don't always know what they're getting and what they're not getting, but that's what she's found over her years of doing it. So I thought that was also very interesting.
Yeah.
I think if I missed anything on our conversations. She said it's by far, she thinks it's the most rewarding out of all training she's ever done. So I think it's nerve wracking for sure, but I do think there's probably a lot of value
Definitely.
in it. I think I covered everything of our conversations with them. Let me see if I missed anything. Yeah, I think I got just about all of it. Oh, a couple things to be considerate about. You know what I forgot now is some are gonna love that it's a busier gym and they're a little more like upbeat in energy, and then others are gonna get very uncomfortable if it's busy. So I think having that in consideration, like if you guys do ever work, you know, with a neurological, like make sure the caregiver, I think, knows that that's a possibility, and you won't fully know, I think, until you get there and try it. And they may have that answer too. They may say, you know, loud noise is not good. So like being mindful of the music and just stuff like that. I mean, it's just considerations I would say to be ready for. In my session, we're trying it at 4:30 p.m., which is a busier time. There's going to be a class going on. It's going to be a little potentially intense for her. But the dad knows, we talked about it, and like in my programming, what I did was we're gonna do a round, and then we're gonna do a super light farmer's carry to the end of the driveway and back. And my goal in that is not necessarily farmer's carrying, but my goal in that is we're in the busyness, and then we're gonna get to take a break from the busyness. We're gonna walk away, it's gonna get quiet, and then we'll come back. We'll be in the busyness, and then so there's not an hour of stimulation, it's at least a little bit of a wave of like ups and downs. So getting creative in like stuff like programming could even be helpful depending on each individual. All right, I don't think I have any other thoughts on that. I will keep you guys posted how that goes though, and what I learned from it. You guys have anything to add in? I would say questions, but I don't know that I can even fully answer a question depending on what it is. All right. What before we call it a day today, what I think I'm going to keep this theme of checking with you guys of what you guys would like to see. Any ideas of what you guys would like to talk about next Tuesday?
Since we did warm up today, why don't we do like post workout options?
Like cool
Stretching,
downs?
walking. Yeah, whatever you want to do for stretching, walking, cool down.
Yeah. Okay, I like that idea. I'm gonna start writing this stuff down because
Actual cool down is something that I would like to do, because that's something that it's lacking on my side.
I'm gonna be honest about that. I don't
don't get much to do.
I don't need to tell you that you're lacking of cooldown. I don't think is your fault. I think the lack of cooldown when you're trying to do something like mayhem on a lot of days is virtually impossible. You're either not coaching at all and you're having time to cool down, or you're coaching and you're probably not having time to cool down. So I would say don't beat yourself up too much there, because the time is just it's very aggressive.
But still like have like a full of things to do. Hey, cool down is not always a stretching. Cool down can be, I mean, talk about it.
Having different tools of cool down within. yeah, we'll talk about those different tools because I think also the least effective one to actually gather the group is when we say, "Hey guys, let's stretch." Half the class doesn't want to get on the floor and stretch. They try to hide in the bathroom and get in their car before you know it. So we'll talk about different strategies and different ways to actually do that. All right, cool down. Any other thoughts? All right. I'll throw something in. I can always find something that we can talk about or work on. Maybe we'll go back to like a series of movements too, and kind of start to dive in and get a little special on that stuff. But I'm gonna go into the original journal and just start scouring. So we'll find information. All right, other than that, I will see you guys on Thursday then.
Thank you.
You guys are welcome. See you then.
See ya.